So it gives me a great pleasure and an honor to, in fact, welcome our first speaker today, and that is Captain Pushp Vaid, Veer Chakra 1971, India-Pakistan War. In fact, he joined the Indian Air Force in 1963 as a helicopter pilot, and during the 1971 war, he was in fact posted in the Eastern Front, which is also known as the Bangladesh Freedom War. And he was part of a special heliborne operations across the river Meghna and also another operation to Sylhet. And not only that, he was also part of the first few people who actually landed in Dhaka and was witnessing the surrender ceremony. So many congratulations to you, sir, and it's a pleasure and honor to have you here with us. In 1974, he migrated to Scotland and thereafter joined the British Airways helicopter, serving as a captain on offshore and international operations. So today, in fact, I leave the floor open to you, Captain Pushp Vaid. We look forward on your insight onto the Chinook crash, which happened on 6 November 1986.
Good evening, everybody in India, and good afternoon, everybody in UK. Thank you for joining me. So I'm going to talk about the Chinook accident I had on 6th of November 1986. And it was the worst civilian helicopter accident in the world. And it'll always be the worst civilian helicopter in the world because no civilian helicopter carries 44 passengers and 3 crew anymore. Most of them carry 19 passengers because after 19 passengers, you have to carry a cabin crew. And in the late 1970s, British Airways and Shell decided that they'll get Chinooks because the number of offshore passengers was increasing a lot, and Chinook we could carry a lot more than Skorsky 61s that we were flying at that time. Skorsky 61s maximum we could carry was 19 passengers, and with the Chinook we could carry 44. So I'll tell you about the Chinook first. And on that day, we had 47 people on board, 45 died, and just 2 of us survived. And there was absolutely zero reason for us to survive. Absolutely zero reason. No reason at all. This is the actual helicopter which crashed. This is outside our tarmac in Dice Airport at Aberdeen. And I had already flown more than 2,500 hours on the Chinooks by the time the accident happened. And I've flown 10 different types of helicopters. And this helicopter was the best I've ever flown in spite of the accident. And even now, all the Army, Navy, Air Forces all over the world use this Chinook. And the reason I'm saying I liked it the most was that it had so much power. We could fill up the full fuel, which gave us 6.5 hours of endurance. And either side these are tanks. And we could have full passengers, 44, all their luggage and everything, and still have spare capacity, which is very rare for a helicopter. Because the helicopters, whenever the weather goes bad, you're always either dropping a passenger or dropping some load to take some more fuel with you. And in this one, we had no such problem. We could go all the way to the Brentfield, which is 170 odd miles from Aberdeen, and come all the way back without bothering about fuel, because we had enough fuel to do up and down trips. So on that day, 6th November, at Shetland Islands, the flight was coming back from Brent Delta to Sambra Airport. We had 44 passengers, oil workers going home, 3 crew, distance of just over 100 miles, beautiful weather. It was a routine flight I'd done hundreds of times before. And this is how the Chinook is on the rig. Passengers can go in from the back, or we can go in from the front on the side. And usually most people went from the back because the winds are quite strong on most of the North Sea platforms. So this is the easiest way of getting in. On that day, the crew, we had 3 crew, myself, I was the captain. I had been in the Indian Air Force before, and I had been in the British Airways for 11 years at that time. And my first officer was a gentleman called Naval Nixon. He was 43 years old. He just returned to flying after 3 years helping his wife set up a chemist shop. And that day he was in the afternoon shift. We had two sets of crew, morning crew, which did 2 flights, and afternoon crew, which did 1 flight. And since Naval hadn't flown for 3 years, he wanted to do extra flying, so he swapped his duty with the morning co-pilot. So Mike Stanley, who was my co-pilot in the morning, swapped with him so Naval could do 2 flights. It's just unfortunate that that swap cost him his life. And the cabin attendant we had was a gentleman, Mike Walton, very experienced guy. He had been with British Airways for a long time. Wonderful gentleman. That's a lovely cockpit, just like any airline, any big aircraft. Beautiful cockpit, very spacious. And often we had a lovely seat in the middle of the 2 pilots where we used to often invite passengers to come and sit and watch the show if they feel like watching what's going on in the cockpit. This is before all the technical stuff came in and terrorists started, so we couldn't get anybody in the cockpit anymore afterwards. Here is the cabin, just like any airliner. 44 seats. We even had a baggage compartment, you can see over here. We had a toilet in the front. 2 seats were facing backwards. Very comfortable. And we always had a stewardess, and depending on the oil company we were working for, we used to serve coffee, tea, or snacks, whatever the oil companies wanted us to do. Literally, just like a airliner. And this just gives you a cutout of the aircraft. It shows you what all the aircraft is doing. The rotors overmesh each other about 35% roughly. And they're counter-rotating. The advantage of counter-rotating rotors is that you don't need a tail rotor then. See, then otherwise, if you only have one rotor, the whole helicopter will turn the other way around. That's why we have the tail rotor. In this one, they're counter-rotating, and the rear rotor is slightly higher than the front rotor. The 2 engines at the back are here, and the shaft goes to the middle, and then one shaft goes all the way top in the front here, then turns nearly 90 degrees to turn the front rotor. One shaft goes to the back and does the same thing for the back rotor. And on the 6th of November, the weather was beautiful, and we had some oil leak in the engines and all, which was cleared up in the morning. And so 9 o'clock, we actually got airborne, and we share the flying. So I was the handling pilot on the way out, and Naval Nixon was the handling pilot on the way back. Handling pilot is the one who's holding the controls. The non-handling pilot is doing admin duties, doing all the radio calls, checking all the weather, talking to the customers, and whatever is required, and helping the captain with whatever the flying pilot needs help from. So, as I said, we got airborne 9 o'clock, and we had original plan of landing on Brent Delta, Brent Charlie and Brent Delta. There are 4 Brent oil fields. So we were going to land in Brent Charlie and drop 20 passengers, pick up 22, then go to Brent Delta, drop 20 passengers, pick up 22. Last minute, Shell came and gave me a 10 kg packet to be dropped on Brent Alpha. And that added 10 minutes to our total flying. By the time you approach, you land, hand over the parcel, pick up, and take off again, that added 10 minutes. Our accident happened just 3 minutes before landing. So if we didn't have the third landing, we would have been on the ground at Samra before the accident happened. So we got airborne about 9 o'clock, set course, and weather was lovely. I went to Brent Alpha, dropped the freight, went to Brent Charlie, dropped 20 passengers, picked up 22, Brent to Delta, again did the same thing. We had 44 passengers on board, and I handed over controls to the co-pilot, and he was going to fly back. The other one passenger who survived, his name is Eric Morans. He was given a seat somewhere at the back here, but he was the last person to board the helicopter. And when he came in, all the seats were occupied, and the only seat which he could get was the 2 seats facing backwards. So he was literally sitting where the cockpit is. His seat was just where this emergency window is. He was sitting there. And I'm not saying that is the reason he survived, because there were 2 people sitting on that seat. And one of them survived and the other guy didn't survive. So it was literally potluck. But having been there, having near the emergency window and near the cockpit section, I think was one of the reasons he survived. So after we got airborne from Brent Delta, Naval Nixon was flying, and we climbed out to 2,500 feet. We put the autopilot on. Then we were just chatting for the time to pass, about 40, 45 minutes before we start descending and start doing all the checklists and everything. And we're just talking about the weather, talking about friends and family and everything. And his brother had just been to India, so he was telling me all the story about the brother's visit to India and everything. Then, as we reached 40 miles, we could hear noise coming in, like a whining noise. And we were discussing where the noise was coming from. We had never heard this noise before, but it didn't sound dangerous at all. And the cabin attendant, we had put the seatbelt sign on, and the cabin attendant had checked all the seats, all the passengers sitting nicely, the seatbelts are on, and he came in through the door. The door is over here. He came in over here, and he was standing here, and he's telling us, thumbs up, passengers are ready for landing. I called up base that we're landing in 2 minutes, 3 minutes time. Just a routine, telling them so that they can meet us once we land. And then he heard us talking about the whining noise. And he's saying the noise is coming from just above his head, which is the gearbox over here. And even he didn't seem concerned about it. And we had decided that once we land back in Sambra, we'll tell the engineers, please have a look where the noise is coming from before we go for our next flight. And that's exactly what the cabin attendant had the same impression as well. And so after he told us, he opened the door at the back and he was just going to sit down. His seat is connected to the door and he was just going to sit down when an almighty bang happened. And the two rotors hit each other. And when they hit each other, and they were moving at 225 RPM, and they almost the speed of sound when they counter-rotating, one is coming this way, one is going the other way. And so when they hit each other, this whole section, the whole red part here, and all the rotors at the back, they disappeared. They broke away from the main aircraft. So once they broke away, you can imagine the helicopter like this, one here, one rotor here, one rotor here. This rotor disappeared, helicopter did this. So we were flying at 100 miles an hour. Suddenly we're flying at 0 mile an hour. And I'm looking straight at the sky. And the helicopter, obviously, the gravity is pulling it back. So the whiplash effect of 100 miles an hour, 0 mile an hour, I think quite a few people died at that time. And my co-pilot, because he was a handling pilot, his back was not resting. His back was forward. He was holding the controls and flying the machine. And so he broke his neck. And because I was the non-handling pilot, my back was resting onto the backrest. I had a whiplash and I had some aches and pains, but luckily it was not as bad as my co-pilots, and it was not fatal for me. And only because he was the handling pilot. If I had been the handling pilot, I would have died, at that time, because the whiplash was so 100 miles an hour to 0 mile an hour is a huge stoppage. So now we are coming backwards towards the sea. I could see the sky in front of me. So I grabbed the cyclic controls, pushed them all the way forward. So when I pushed the cyclic control forward, this section from here broke from the main cabin. The front rotor was still turning. It responded to my controls and it broke the nose from the main cabin, but the floor was still attached. So we flipped. So I was looking at the sky, and next thing I was looking at the sea, straight down. And I calculated it from 300 feet. We were at 300 feet. I calculated at 300 feet to the sea level, it took us 4.3 seconds. But to me, even now, looking back, I thought I was in the air for much longer than 4 seconds. And by the time we hit the water, the helicopter was traveling at nearly 100 miles an hour. So when it hit the water, this whole section hit first, this area here. And then the cockpit broke off from the main cabin and it fell in the water. And while we were coming down, the front rotor also hit the windscreen on the co-pilot side. And a lot of the debris was flying in. And my left side of the face was all being hit by the debris of the windscreen. And it was cut up quite badly. Luckily, it didn't touch my eyes at all. It hit my nose. and my nose was broken, but nobody noticed it in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Nobody noticed my nose at all. And anyway, that I'll come back to that later. When I did this, when I was going up and when I go down, I felt the negative G, as if I was doing an outside loop. And so now I'm coming down, we hit the water, and the cockpit broke off from the main cabin, and it dived into the water very gently, very, I didn't feel going into the water. And with the acceleration, with the speed that we were coming at, the cockpit kept going down, maybe at least 10 meters, maybe more, by the time it stopped. When we hit the water, we have emergency windows on either side of the cockpit. So my emergency window had flown off. So I had a big hole over there. And it was 11:30 daytime. And I could see the sun, so I knew which way I had to go. So I came out of the cockpit, and for some reason, I started swimming back towards the cabin. I was swimming this way, and it was getting darker. So I turned around, and I went back again through the window and swam to the top. Now, while we were on finals, before the accident happened, I heard the AMSI rescue helicopter taking off for training. Exactly at 11:30, roughly, they got airborne. Normally, they go for training. They go for training every day, 9 o'clock in the morning. That day, they got delayed because some crew had some urgent stuff to do. So they got delayed. So the training happened at 11:30. Just fortunate for me. And the back of my mind, I knew the AMSI rescue helicopter's taken off when my accident happened, and I knew he'll come and pick me up. So I was not concerned that I was going to be in the water for too long. And all the passengers and the crew, we do training at Robert Gordon Institute in Aberdeen, where a helicopter is put in a tank in a swimming pool and turned over, and we are supposed to count up to 7, giving the time to the rotors to stop in the water and then swim out of the helicopter. And every 2-3 years we're supposed to do that. Every 2-3 years we're supposed to do that. So that day, so I thought, just like me, I was swimming out. I thought everybody else will be swimming out as well. And when I reached the top, I saw so much wreckage around me and so much broken pieces, oil and hydraulic and fuel. Smell was there, and the wind was there, and there was a piece of wreckage. I think part of the fuel gauge. This is the fuel gauge here. It is like a bowl. So I found that bowl and I sat in it. And 2 seconds later, the wave came and pushed me back in the water. Again, I wasn't concerned. I was just holding on to it. I thought the AMSI rescue helicopter will come and pick me up. So when the AMSI rescue helicopter got airborne, control tower told him, look out for the Chinook, because that is the area he was going to come, our approach area, where he was going to do his training. And so he told him to look out for the Chinook. So as soon as he turned towards us, and he told the control tower, I can't see the Chinook. He said, no, I just given him clearance. He's on short finals now. And then the control tower looked up and he couldn't see us. In the meantime, the AMSI rescue helicopter saw some wreckage in the sea. So he started coming towards us. So I was feeling very, very cold. And, I was, the temperature of the seawater must be 6-7 degrees Celsius at that time in November. So I was feeling very cold. I was breathing quite hard. But I was holding on to the wreckage and I was waiting for the Skoskis, the AMSI rescue helicopter to come. And when he came, I waved at him and they put the winch down, they picked me up and put me in the seat. We have a survival suit. The survival suit was full of water because in the cockpit it becomes very hot because it's like a glass house. And so we keep the survival suit open. Survival suit will only work if it is fully zipped up. But if we keep it fully zipped up, it's very uncomfortable to be flying. So we always to leave it half open. And so, of course, I didn't have time to zip it up. And so my suit was full of water. And they put me in the sea. They put me in the AMSI rescued helicopter. And then they were looking for more people, survivors. While I was in the water, and holding on. One body popped up next to me, another one popped up next to me, another one popped up. 8, 9 bodies popped up next to me. And I was shocked. That's the first time it occurred to me that maybe these people didn't make it. And they were not doing anything. They were not making. I was looking for them to see if they're making any movement at all, but they were not making any movement. And that's the first time it occurred to me that probably these people didn't make it. And Eric Morans, who was sitting as is in the seat facing backwards, when he heard the all might bang, he zipped himself up completely, and then something hit him, and he was unconscious. So just like me, he went 10 meters underwater. And when he reached 10 meters underwater, because his suit was full of air, like a football, it got thrown out by the water, and he reached the surface. When he reached the surface, one wave came and woke him up, opened his eyes, and one dinghy had inflated next to him. So he grabbed that dinghy and he put the rope around his hand, and he passed out again. Next time he woke up was when he heard the helicopter picking me up. So when he saw the helicopter picking me up, he waved at them. So we went and picked him up as well. So 2 of us had been saved, and 2 of us were sitting in the helicopter. Now I'll give you the technical part of it, what happened in the some more photographs. This is the bevel ring gear, which is the shaft which is coming from the back here. And this one is the bevel ring gear, which is the one which broke. And this is the mainland of Scotland. And this is where the Aberdeen is over here. And the crash site is Samraj. These are little islands 150 miles north of Aberdeen. And we were only 2 miles from the runway. And this is a picture of the gear, the way it is installed. You've got 24 nuts and bolts. This shaft is connected to this gear, bevel ring gear, which is the one which broke. And this is the shim, which is put in the middle. So what had happened was in the 1985, we found that some of these nuts were getting loose. And our engineers found a special grease called Presto Black. And we started using that grease, and that stopped those nuts and bolts getting loose. Every now and then we used to have 1 or 2 nuts who were getting loose out of those 24. So they found this grease and they started using it, and it started working. So we told Boeing, our engineers told Boeing that this is the problem, this is the solution, and it's working. And Boeing said, no, we are the engineers, we will tell you what to do, we'll modify the gear. So this is the Mark 5 gear. So they produced what is called Mark 6 gear. And in the Mark 6 gear, in the Mark 5 gear, this is the shim we had, which had scallops in it. In the Mark 6 gear, they didn't put the scallops. The advantage of scallops was that when we came back from the North Sea flying with all the moisture, the water used to condense and become steam or used to condense and become water and go through this shimmed area into the sump and disappear. But once the scallops were removed, there was no way for the water to travel down to the bottom. So all the water was staying on the top. And over a period, it became acidic. And the second thing Boeing had done was that earlier on, we used to inspect the gear every 300 flying hours. Boeing said, no, we done the modification. It's become much more powerful, much more stronger. We don't need to check every 300 hours. We check every 1500 hours. My accident happened after 680. So if we had checked it at 300, we would have seen something is going wrong. Definitely at 600, they would have seen something is gone wrong. And this is what the gear looked like when it broke. So all this area had become, rusty, and eventually it broke. And that is the noise we were hearing. And this is the wreckage, you can see. Nothing is left. I was sitting here, and the aircraft investigation boat engineers were there when I took this photograph, and they're saying, how the hell did he come out of this aircraft? And I asked the same question. Even today, I asked the same question. How the hell did I come out of that aircraft? So anyway, they put me in the rescued helicopter. My suit was still full of air. I told the crew, I tried to tell the crew that to cut my socks off, at least the water can come out. but it was so noisy, and of course they were looking for 45 more people. Eventually, he got my message, and he cut my socks off. At least the water came out. But in the meantime, our body temperature was dropping, and our eyes were closing. Both of us, our eyes were closing, and we were not making any movement. So he went and told the captain, "Sir, let's take these two gentlemen to the hospital." And so they rushed us to Lavik Hospital, which is about 10 minutes flying from there. In the meantime, another Bell 47 had Bell 212 had arrived for rescue, and a boat had been launched as well, and and of course they hadn't seen any other body move, any other movement anyway. So they rushed us to the hospital. By the time we reached the hospital, my temperature was down to 33 Celsius. When I reached the hospital, they cut our clothes off completely, wrapped us up in a tin foil blanket so that our body can warm itself up. After about half an hour, I came to and I asked the doctor, and the doctor happened to be from India. He was talking to me in Hindi. It's quite amazing. We were chatting away, and I asked him, "Any more survivors?" He said, "No, just the two of you." That was a real shock for me, absolute shock for me. And in the meantime, when the accident happened, my company at Aberdeen had rung up my home to inform my family what was going on. And my son was at home, so they told him that there's been an accident. We don't know if there's any survivors in it at all. So my son managed to get tracked down. The mom, she had gone to visit a friend, and she came running back. Then they saw the news on BBC and ITV. And another friend of mine from British Airways also came along, to console them and look after them. And then they came to know that I was alive. So British Airways arranged for us aircraft to take my son and my wife and my friend to Samra to be with me. And that's how they came to know about the accident. Now, after we were in the hospital, I was there for about 4 or 5 days. And then from there, they brought us to Aberdeen. And in Aberdeen, I was there for another 10 days. And I had only broken my toe and my nose. And in about 4 months, I was medically fit. In about 5 months, I had my aircrew license, medical license back. British Airways kept telling me, no, you must go and see so-and-so psychiatrist, so-and-so. I saw about 3 or 4 different psychiatrists. They couldn't get over the fact that my brain was still functioning. So eventually all the psychiatrists gave me clearance and I was back flying. So I flew for 20 years after that. So I told you how the gear broke, and after we went to 47 families were together. This is the aircraft investigation report. Boeing was blamed for the accident. CAA and FAA were also blamed because they didn't do a thorough checkup of the modified gear. The direct cause, as I showed you the picture of the gear, was the bevel ring gear which broke, and that we lost the synchronization and the collision. The underlying cause was we didn't do the proper checks. Now, we went, after that, 47 families got together and we sued Boeing. And we picked up the topmost lawyer in America. The aim was the case should be heard in America. The compensation they give in Scotland for similar situations is very limited, very small. And aim was to go to an American court and see if we can sue Boeing in America. So we went to Philadelphia, and the lawyer we picked was the top lawyer of American aviation and all that. And he came and gave us briefing on what's going to go and how we're going to do it. And he presented the case to the lawyer and the judge in Philadelphia, and the judge agreed with him that the case can be heard in America. But of course, for Boeing, that is not a good thing. That Boeing didn't want any case to be heard in America because the compensations are huge in America. And they said, we got aircraft all over the world. Everywhere there's a Boeing accident, people are going to come to America and sue us. So they didn't want this to happen. So somehow they managed to tell the judge not to give the judgment. And the judgment was not given to us in writing. Verbally, he told us that this is his agreement. He agrees with us, and the case should be heard in Philadelphia. So we didn't get in writing. And in the meantime, our lawyers went and asked Boeing, can we go to the archives of Boeing and see if we can dig up some more evidence? So we went to the archives of Boeing, and we discovered in 1979, Boeing had a similar problem with the Army Chinooks, and they'd done the same modification they did for us, and it had not worked. So what they did after that was they made a new kind of gear which didn't have any nuts and bolts. So the shaft and the gear were one piece, and they gave it to the Army, Navy, Air Force. They didn't give it to the civilian Chinooks because there were only 10 civilian Chinooks, and if they were going to give it to the 10 civilian Chinooks, they would have had to get CAA clearance, FAA clearance, and that will cost a lot of money, and that will cost a lot of clearance and time and money, everything, and only for 10 Chinooks. So they said, we'll just keep an eye on the civilian Chinooks. But when we told the problem to the engineers in Boeing in 1985, they didn't even go into their own archives, and they did the modification which has been tried in 1979 by Boeing engineers, and it had not worked. They tried the same modification for our Chinooks. So when my accident happened, we opened the other 5 Chinooks. We had 6 of them. We opened the other 5 Chinooks, and all the other 5 Chinooks were ready to crash as well. They all had a similar problem. It just so happened mine was the first one. And so after 5-6 years, the case carried on, and eventually we did out-of-court settlement, and Boeing got away with it very cheaply. They didn't. Our lawyer was telling us that all of us should get at least $1 million each, and Boeing managed to get away with it very cheaply. So that's me. That's my story. One more thing I'll show you. This is the major accident I had. I've had 9 more similar incidents where I walked away from death. And so this book, this lady, Sangeeta Walit is writing, is going to be ready in springtime. And so this is the cover of the book. So I just wanted to show you this coming out in springtime. If you want to listen to the rest of my stories, it's all in there.
Thank you so much, Captain Vaid. That was really insightful, and thank you sharing with us your story.
You're welcome, sir.